Hello, BookTube. I've got some books I want to show you for Tuesday reads. Books that I've either just recently read or I'm going to read today. Starting with one that I got that's too unusual to let sit on the back burner. It goes straight to the front of the line. It's The 48 by Donna Hosey. It's a YA novel. I'm not going to do it justice. I'm going to have to read to you just a bit. I don't think I have a pub sheet. All right, that's all right. That's all right. Charles and Alexander of Cleves, recently arrived in England, are identical twins. Tall, athletic, clever, and unmarried, they are the talk of King Henry VIII's court. Lady Margaret is a calculating maid of honor, serving the mercurial Queen Anne Boleyn. All around her swirls intrigue, treachery, violence, and prejudice. Finessing a union with either son of Cleves, it hardly matters which, could possibly mean escape. The Cleves brothers, however, are not in England to make merry with Henry VIII's courtiers. Instead, they are here to prevent the king's next marriage. As newly minted assets of the 48, they have spent the whole of their young lives training to serve the clandestine institution that raised them. They are prepared to do anything to see the 48's agenda succeed, even if it means rewriting the history of the world. And you can see the science fiction element running through this Tudor historical fiction when you take a close look at the cover. Oh, our assassin has a code on her hand. So I am going to dive into this right away. This next one I mentioned on this channel before. I had an advanced copy that I read and really liked. And it's been on my mind. It's stuck in my imagination because I keep coming back to how much I enjoyed it. And I got the finished copy, so I'm going to read it again. I'm just going to dive right in and read it again. And it's this, The Improbable Wendell Willkie, by David Levering Lewis, who won 2 Pulitzer Prizes, I believe. He's a professor emeritus of history at New York University. And he received a Pulitzer Prize, yes, for each of his volumes of W.E.B. Du Bois. And he lives in New York City. So, and I read this originally just at a shop, just at a canter, about, an insurrectionist, populist American presidential candidate. And my first impression, as I was reading the first half of the book, was that the author was maybe straining a little too much to find parallels with the modern era. But the more I've thought about it since I finished it, the more I realized just how lean and fast-paced a picture of the political era it is. Not ours, but its. So I'm going to read this again, and once again, I know that I've said this many times on this channel, but it is once again a perfect emblem of 2018 as far as biographies go. That unconventional, you would think by this point in any given year, my long list of favorite biographies for that year would be lots and lots of presidential biographies. And instead, this is a presidential wannabe. And there have been a couple of other presidential wannabes. One book about a Speaker of the House, a golf pro, a martial artist. So I haven't been able to predict 2018 biography-wise, and that's fine by me. So I'm gonna read this again, and then another reread. I got another copy of this, and it's worth it. It's worth reading again. This is Happily Ever Esther, the story of two men. A couple in New York who decided to adopt a micro pig as a pet. One of these cute little pot-bellied pigs that would run around their apartment in Georgetown. And there was a mistake somewhere along the line, either theirs or the part of the person selling the micro pig, because it turned out the micro pig was not a micro pig at all. It was an industrial hog. And Esther quickly grew to 600 pounds. And wandered around in their apartment, walked down their hallways, required, barrelfuls of food every half day. But the wonderful part of the story is that long before she reached such epic proportions, just in this enormous animal in their apartment, long before she reached that point, they fell in love with her, and she fell in love with them. And they decided to change their lives for her. And eventually that included moving out of the city to a farm and creating an animal sanctuary. Esther is there, of course, but there are lots of other animals too, and this is the story of that animal sanctuary. So there's a lot of Green Acres type, city guys from it now encountering the country type humor, and also very, very heartwarming portraits of not only Esther but all the animals that live there. I read this already a while ago, but I'm going to read it again. I have a finished copy with the pictures, so I'll read it again. The next one is also a reread. BookTube. This was a favorite on BookTube. Everybody loved it. I did not. I thought it was not only not good, but terrible. But because it's BookTube, I am assuming that I've seen video after video after video of people whose judgment I like, whose minds I certainly respect, praising this thing, so I am going to give it another try. I got the trade paperback of The End We Start From by Megan Hunter. This is post-apocalyptic science fiction. It's short, it's lyrical. It's meant to be all sorts of things that would push Steve's buttons, and I didn't think it worked at all. Let me see, what do we have here? The internationally best-selling first novel by Megan Hunter. This is loaded with praise, with blurbs of praise. Just imagines new motherhood in the midst of an all-too-possible climate change catastrophe. As London is submerged below the floodwaters, an unnamed woman must take to the road with her newborn son in search of safety. A tale of endurance and love in the face of ungovernable change. The End We Start From is an undeniable debut, is an indelible debut by a writer of immense talent. That was a kind of, see, the cover just has, the cover is it's a new cover illustration, but all it has is just one word, hosannas of praise on it, and I'm sure that the book itself will, the book itself has tons and tons of praise. Good Lord, from everybody. Yikes. Okay, well, that doesn't sway me quite so much. These blurbs just from everybody don't actually sway me quite so much. Blurbs from authors saying, boy, this really moved me, don't sway me at all, because how do I know that the author doesn't read only one book a year and would have been swayed by anything? And blurbs from fellow critics also tend not to sway me, because not every critic is immune to bandwagon jumping. And no critic wants to be that one who's in the anthology of bad reviews 100 years from now saying that James Joyce's Ulysses is a piece of crap. It is, but people laugh at those reviews now. That can weigh heavy on some reviewers' minds. It shouldn't. It absolutely shouldn't, but nevertheless, it does. But it's neither one of those things. Really, it's you. It's BookTube that made me grab this and will make me reread it with an open mind. It won't take an hour to do. I will cleanse my original first impression, and I will go at this again and see if I can see what so many other people saw here in this little community. And then the next two books are new. I haven't read them yet. I'm going to read them. They're romances. I'm going to pop them down like candy. The first one is another one by Cat Sebastian. It Takes Two to Tumble, which just matter-of-factly has two men on the cover. I know that I said this last Cat Sebastian book that I held up, which I'm hoping wasn't this one. But I can't stress enough the fact that this is just ordinarily there. It's just an ordinary thing. It's in bookstores like this. It's on spinner racks with romances like this. And there are no people picketing outside. There are no parent groups. Nothing like that. There are no stores holding this back from going out for sale. It's normal. It's accepted that you can do this. And once upon a time, very little time ago, it was not at all. Anyway, what have we got here? After an unconventional upbringing, Ben is perfectly content with the quiet, predictable life of a country vicar, free of strife and turmoil. When he's asked to look after an absent naval captain's 3 wild children, he reluctantly agrees, but instantly falls for the hellions. And when their stern but gloriously handsome father arrives, Ben is tempted in ways that make him doubt everything. And the captain is Philip Darcy. And about him we're told some of Philip Darcy's favorite things. Number 1, his ship. Number 2, people doing precisely as they're told. And number 3, touching the irresistible vicar at every possible opportunity. Shiver me timbers. So that is It Takes Two to Tumble. That is one of the romances I'll be reading. And then the other one is this, Falling for His Grace. and this is by Kristen Vaden. Just a classic gold embossed romance cover. Lucas Mayfield, the 8th Earl of Hertford, couldn't be more pleased with the private club that was his brainchild. But when a young courtesan at the club's masquerade appears far too innocent, his suspicions are raised, along with his interest, until her gleaming hair tumbles down and he recognizes her as the Duke of Chatterwood's beautiful daughter. How did the minx even know the place existed? And how has he allowed himself to give in to temptation and kiss her? More perplexing, she has vowed the kiss will not be their last. So there you have it. Two romances that I'll be diving into. And then the last thing I'll be rounding out, I will probably take the rest of the week to do this just at great leisure. It deals with comic books. In a way, kinda. I'm still amazed. I'm amazed and so happy. In January, Marvel Comics is coming out with a $100 big hardcover anthology, reprinting in gloriously reworked color the first 26 issues of their Conan the Barbarian from the 1970s, written by Roy Thomas and drawn by Barry Windsor Smith. They're doing finally, after all this time, they're doing a big, beautiful, collected volume of that epic launch of Conan the Barbarian. Roy Thomas was a huge Conan fan. Barry Windsor Smith was just beginning. You can actually watch it issue by issue in this Conan run. He's just beginning to leave behind his apprentice stage as a writer and become the legend that he will be, with a completely distinctive style of his own. And I gobbled up these issues. I cannot tell you. At Tro's dry goods store, I gobbled them up. 25 cents seemed... It was a large amount of money, but I gobbled them up. They were glorious. Absolutely glorious. And Marvel is coming out with a big volume, finally collecting them for your library shelf, instead of the rotting, moldering, pencil-bound or staple-bound paper issues that I have in a box here at Hyde Cottage. And knowing that was coming, I asked the editor, an editor at a journal where I sometimes write, if there's any chance that she would be interested in a long piece about not only that volume but Conan just in general. I thought it was an extreme long shot. I thought there's no chance she'll shoot this down, and then I'll pitch her, a biography of Keats or something like that, and that will be much, much more likely to strike her fancy. And she took it. She took it right away. In fact, she said, "I never miss a chance to read about Conan." So, I have the Old Bailey hack dream come true. I have a paying commission to write about Conan the Barbarian in January. It's a long time away. I don't need much time to write about Conan, but I'm going to spend the time soaking up the volumes. And I thought at first, well, okay, Marvel and DC are so bad about getting advanced copies of their stuff to reviewers. I think it's because they just are so locked into the specialty shop mind frame. Used to be you could get comics anywhere, and now you mostly can't. Now they're mostly for sale at comic shops. Very desultorily anywhere else. You'd be lucky. You couldn't, like for instance, if you were paying attention to your local Barnes and Noble or to some grocery store, if they're still sold in supermarkets, there's no chance that would be done conscientiously enough so that you could, for instance, follow a storyline in Batman or Spider-Man. It would never happen. It's totally scattershot, which is something that wasn't even true of places like Tro's Dry Goods or your neighborhood drugstore or something like that, where their deliveries are also scattershot, but a kid or a teenager with ready money could go to the guy behind the counter and say, "I know this is scattershot, but you have an order form. Could you make sure to get this every month? Could you make sure to get the Mighty Thor every month? And if you do, I'll be right here every month. You see me every month. You know me by name. You know my dogs. I would like it if we not miss any of those 9.9 out of 10 times the shop owners were happy to oblige. They wouldn't do it for punk kids who weren't a good bet for the money, but if they knew you, absolutely they would. Whereas your local, big chain bookstore or supermarket, they have 10 people to go through and they don't care at all. So I think comics companies, the two big superhero comics companies, Marvel and DC, have just become locked into the idea of specialty shops and a straight funnel to collectors. And as a result, they seem to have very little interest in word of their products being amplified by critics, which is what every other publisher in the world wants to happen. So they are really bad about, for instance, getting me a volume like this Conan book that's coming out. There's no way that I could count on it ahead of time. And at first I thought, okay, I can't count on the volume ahead of time, but I want this thing to be ready right when the volume comes out. This piece of mine that I'm going to write, I want it to be ready right when the volume comes out. So, you know, what do I do? And then I realized that I've been collecting Conan anthologies for a long time. So I went and looked, and sure enough, from Black Horse Press, they did the Chronicles of Conan. And the Chronicles of Conan are up to like volume 50 or something like that. Just thin, full-color reprints of Conan. And I went and looked at the Chronicles of Conan that I have, and it turns out that in these three contain almost all of the issues that are going to be in that big hardcover. There's some slightly harder to find things that'll be in there as well. I bet I can find those. I bet I have them here, reprinted somewhere. But the main thing is these issues, the Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith issues. And I have those in these volumes. I don't have them in this big ornate new thing that I very much want. But I have them enough to reference them in writing. So now it's just a question of self-control. Now I just have to control myself so that I don't write about Conan to the exclusion of all other things, because I've written about Conan enormously in the past. There was a new Conan movie just a few years ago, and I know someone who's connected with that movie, and I wanted it to do well in my own little way, in my own little corner of the blogosphere. I wanted to sing its praises and heighten awareness, so I did a whole bunch of writing for Conan. And, you know, I should probably link some of those down below in case any of you are curious. I have written there and elsewhere, I have written about this character a lot. So it's an absolute thrill, the prospect of doing it again for a much, much larger audience. That is just an absolute thrill. So I have to resist now. I have to resist the urge to do that to the exclusion of all else, because I have a lot of work to do between now and January. But I am definitely going to write the piece early. It's usually anathema for an old Bailey hack like myself to write early for a deadline. You meet your deadline. You never miss your deadline. But you never anticipate your deadline either. That just gives editors ideas. But in this case, I'm not going to be able to resist. So for that, this is sort of a Tuesday reads, but this will merge into the rest of the week as things come and go. And the bedrock of those is to reread Conan. Not exactly a hardship, but also the Improbable Wendell Wilkie, a reread. The 48. Which is new. It's YA. It's historical YA. Seems really good. I can't wait to get to it. I hope it doesn't disappoint. I'll know right away. I'll know in the first few pages whether or not the author has actually researched the Tudor era. Unfortunately, they give it away, or they confirm it, mostly give it away, almost immediately. So we shall see. That bit about going back to Henry VIII's court in order to make merry gives me pause. That is a phrase that is typical of people who have not researched Henry's court and are thinking, merry old England, when it was actually a place of long, dark shadows. So we shall see. That's just a cover copy. That might not be the author's. Then Happily Ever Esther, which is the second Esther memoir. The first one was a couple of years ago. Then this is the second one in which the tale is told of the founding of her farm sanctuary. The end we start from. Going to give it another try. And then two romances. It Takes Two to Tumble and Falling for His Grace. So that is a somewhat formless Tuesday read, but still. I guess we could call it a reading vlog, right? A vlog? We could call it a reading vlog. I never used the term, but isn't this channel a vlog? I almost never miss a day, one way or another. It's a Tuesday batch of books for you to think about, and that I wanted to show you and enthuse about and natter on about. So now that I've done all that, I shall exit stage left, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.